often. I think it's important, whenever you're looking for a job, you're not only getting interviewed from the practice, you need to interview them as well. Ask them all these questions. Make sure you're comfortable with the terms, especially ask people that are practicing in there, hey, how long have you been here? What's the turnover rate like here? If everyone in the office is like, oh, I just started 3 weeks ago, and no one's been there for longer than a year or two, there's probably some red flags there, right? You want to make sure that there's a good culture there. Ask another PA there, hey, what does collections look like for you? How long does it take you to hit that bonus threshold? They'll tell you. If they're afraid to tell you, there's probably some other underlying things that you need to worry about.
I have with us today Brent. He is one of the driving forces behind MyDermRecruiter. They are an incredible platform for empowering PAs and clinicians, not only in the dermatology space, but even outside of that, to really navigate their contracts and succeed clinically and financially with their positions. Brent's actually uniquely positioned because he has some background in finance plus the strategy and is very seasoned in the space of helping clinicians pair with employers who are actually going to be a rewarding match for the long term for both sides. So with that, thank you for joining us today, Brent. We're excited to dive into all things contract pearls and job search.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Really looking forward to diving into this with our audience today. I think this is a really unique subject we get to talk about. I think it's something that people don't ask questions on all the time. So it's fun. So we're here to help you guys out today and hopefully just be a good sounding board and resource for you guys. Kind of like Kristen mentioned a little bit about my background. So I actually come from a finance background. So I worked in finance for a little while. Now I've been in the dermatology recruiting space. So we've been in business here at MyDermRecruiter for about 10 years now. Worked with our CEO and founder, Michelle Sullentrop. So she worked with 15, 20 different specialties over the years. So we've got that good base of how everything works. We love Derm. So we've stuck with Derm, but we see a little bit of everything. I think there's really relatables with everything out in the job space of, what should you look for in contract? Should you work with recruiters? Should you not work with recruiters? What are the different types of jobs out there for everybody? So yeah, just really looking forward to diving into all these details with you guys today.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually didn't even know that you had such an expansive background in other arenas of medicine.
Yep, we've seen it all. Constantly get referrals from other, sources of medicine too. So people coming in and out of derm, especially on the NP and PA side, we worked with people with all specialty backgrounds. We've reviewed all kinds of contracts over the years. So yeah, we've got a good base and good foundation for our
Perfect.
audience here today, I think.
Yeah, we've got a lot to learn, sounds like.
Yeah.
Tell us, how did you specifically get into healthcare recruiting?
I met Michelle several years ago, and we were just really starting to expand our business. We were really just launching. So at that time, before I came in, we had about 300 jobs nationwide that we
Okay.
represent. And now we're up to over 1,000 jobs. So we've really kind of built the platform up. It's definitely scalable across other businesses as well. So I kind of jumped into that space with a unique background in finance, having no other healthcare experience. That was my first question to Michelle. Even was like,
Yeah.
I don't know anything,
Right.
about dermatology. How am I qualified for this? And she reassured me there. Now I know more than I ever thought I would know just about dermatology, the healthcare field in general, So
Yeah.
a lot of it is there's a base of a business background too there. And that's why I really love what we do, because we are really more educators
Hmm.
in the space here. We are definitely not the ones who are going to be teaching you about the ins and outs of medicine. You
Right.
guys already have that experience. So we are here to help you on the backside of that. How do you negotiate jobs? How do you find jobs? What are they not teaching you when you're in school about going out and finding your first job or your second job? Or you're like, you've had a couple jobs, you've been bouncing around. You want to find that long-term fit for you. That's where kind of my background comes into play. And I just really enjoy helping people in that arena there.
It's funny that you say that because your background is business, right? And you're like, that's really what I needed to parlay into the space,
Yeah.
the job negotiation aspect, the contract aspect.
Yep.
And then here we are. Most medical professionals know nothing about business, and we're trying to do this because it's like a mandatory part of our professional lives. But
Yep.
without help, you can see how we don't necessarily have the skills to do this very well.
Sure. So many times people are afraid just to even ask for help. That's the biggest advice, I could even give just right off the front of our recording here is ask for help out there. It's okay to not know everything. I still don't know everything out there. That's for sure. I constantly rely on key opinion leaders and just in the industry, just in the derm world, in the bigger, larger healthcare space, constantly learning more. Use your resources out there. The resources are definitely out there for you guys. Make sure that you're using them. There are no dumb questions. I can tell you from my standpoint, we've heard everything. I see so many times people are just afraid to ask. I can tell they want to ask them this is a dumb question. A lot of times that leads to so many other follow-ups that we can help get into with them. And that's where, it's fun for us to help bridge that gap there. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're just here to help you try to figure out what's best for you as well.
Much needed in our space for sure. So for 2026 now, can't believe it's 2026, but for
I know.
2026, what's like the overall landscape that you're seeing in terms of just big macro trends in jobs for clinicians?
I love that question. So we're just diving into 2026. 2026 has been busier than ever for us, honestly, right out of the gate. So I feel like we're in a good spot in the hiring world. If you're looking for a job out there, now is the time. Even if you're like, you know what, I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at. It's okay. It doesn't hurt to still look. It's okay to have options out there. I would say on a big national trend, employers, both on the private equity side, on the private practice side, on the academic side, hospital systems, multi-specialty, we are hearing from everybody out there. So kind of what's unique to our background is that we kind of see the job market before it even hits the job boards because we're hearing from these, key opinion leaders, the CEOs of these companies, what's coming. They're constantly trying to forecast 1, 2, 3 quarters down the road, and it's busy across everything. So I would say right now that the demand is very high for the job market, but the supply is low, especially in, your specialty fields as well. And I've into that a little bit more too as we get into this. So know your niche, know what you want to do, know what you want to focus on, and know that there are opportunities out there and we can help you kind of, figure out what's the best fit for you. It's a good time to be looking for a job right now.
That is so reassuring to hear. Actually had someone reach out on social media literally today, and they had said, "Hey, I'm in a super saturated market, and so I'm just going to have to accept a low paying job. Any suggestions?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, let's go back to the beginning of the assumption that you just need to accept a low paying job because you're in a quote saturated market."
Right.
It's like, no, I mean, of course, there are large hospital systems that in recent quarters have intermittently been on hiring freezes, but that trend isn't across the board in all of medicine.
Correct.
And my understanding is that many of those hiring freezes have eased up. And so there are
They have.
positions, and you're saying too, especially the more specialty your skill set is,
Yeah.
the less supply that's out there. And so you should be able to go out and find a position and find hopefully multiple job offers and negotiate and not be
Yes.
accepting this idea that you have to take a low paying job because the market's saturated right now.
I know. I love that you use that as an example. We hear the same thing out there too. So many times people settle because, well, someone's told them this, hey, it's always worked like this in the past. So, okay, well, if I want to be, in this big populous city, that I'm just going to have to take less to be there. That's not necessarily true. Practices still want to hire the best talent. So never cut yourself short in the market, just like you said.
I mean, you've talked to probably, I would guess, thousands of medical professionals by now
Yes.
about
Yeah.
like getting their job, getting the contract. What's something that you wish people knew besides like don't sell yourself short before you try? But what are some other things that you're like, if only every single PA, NP, whatever knew these few things as they were starting to look for jobs?
Yeah, I love that. So the first and most important thing I would tell you guys is give yourself time. Whenever you come and you're rushed, you're going to rush decisions. You're going to leave things on the table. So make sure you give yourself time. The hiring process takes a long time. Sometimes it's a 3 to 6 month process. So really make sure you know what school districts you want to be in. And if that's important to raising your family or what do you like to do outside of work, it's important that you define your non-negotiables before you even go in to your job search. Because if you just go in and say, I'll take anything, I just need a job, you're more than likely going to be very unhappy in that job sooner, probably rather than later. So start with a list. That's what we always tell, clinicians. Make sure you start with a list of what's non-negotiable for you. Now, sometimes we might have to push back on some of those things. We don't get everything, but why not start with a list of everything you want? And then, we can go through that and figure out, okay, this is realistic. This is realistic. Look, they're willing to bend a little bit here. We can push back over here a little bit. So there's a lot of things there. Biggest thing I could say too is don't just chase the highest dollar. You will not be happy in that position. Most providers that start out that are making the most money did not start out making the most money out there. They start at the bottom, worked up. They have high productivity. Now that they're seeing they negotiated a good solid contract that's going to work for them. So make sure your contract works for you and you're not working for your contract is a big thing we always recommend too.
So helpful to hear that time context. And I think,
Yeah.
honestly, not to plug the personal finance side, of course, it's my nature, but that's the first thing that came to my mind is whoever is the more desperate one in the negotiations wins, right? And so if you have cash reserves and you have maybe additional income streams outside of your W 2 job, you have the ability to, in a job transition, take your time and not be stressed to the end of the earth about the fact that your next student loan payment is due and your mortgage and all of these things. You really can actually sit and wait and be intentional and allow the process to take as long as it needs to take to get the job you want and the contract that you want. versus like being frazzled in a situation where you're like signing anything for anyone that will offer you a job because you're just like, I need a paycheck.
Right, right. When people rush, mistakes are made whenever you're rushing this. So really make sure you're taking the time. We always tell people, I've reviewed hundreds, it seems like maybe thousands of contracts even over the years. Make sure you're understanding exactly what you're signing. We always tell people we can help you review it. We always recommend getting an attorney as well. They're going to help with some of the more nuanced things as well. So we just want to be like, your sounding board for you of like, hey, what's real, what's not in there. Like I said, we've seen where people can flex in contracts, where they can't, what's worth pushing, what's worth not pushing back for, just things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious because I know you do a lot of like private practice positions, especially in the dermatology space. In the contract world, when you're going with like large medical centers, how
Yeah.
much flexibility have you seen in terms of like using an attorney and pushing back on a couple of contract points? I think the overall thought process in the clinician world is like, they're this behemoth, you are a little fly, and like you can do nothing about your contract, either sign it or don't. Is that true? Not true? An element of truth?
Yes, yeah, yes and no. There's a little bit of truth in there, a little bit not in there. We always will tell you, like I said, especially with the bigger hospital groups out there and the bigger private equity groups out there. Yes, do they have templated contracts that they're sending you and the person in the clinic next to you? Absolutely, yes, of course. And obviously, will they negotiate on different terms in there? The answer is surprisingly yes. And most people don't realize that, because what's important to these groups, especially as it gets more competitive out there trying to find the right talent, is that they're not going to lose somebody over, maybe the standard non-compete is 15 miles on that. Maybe you want it down to 12. It doesn't hurt to ask. They can't change it if you don't ask. That's one thing we always tell people. Do we want to set you up for failure? Of course not. But there are little things in there that can be negotiated. And even especially when it comes down to compensation, even a percentage or two, on your collections or, different RVU miles, that can make a big difference in the long run. And would the hiring group rather have you and pay you a little bit more, maybe over a second tier candidate? Yes, they will flex on that for you. But it's a good question. It's a big misconception, but I think it's important that, you do fight for yourself and what's important to you in these contracts.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is best practice for every single clinician, doesn't matter if you're getting a contract from a large medical group, some hospital system, or from a tiny little private practice. You should negotiate every single contract every single time, if only for the practice. Even if it's something
Right.
small, it's like if you don't learn to ask, you'll never ask. It never gets less awkward. It never gets like less uncomfortable. It's a skill.
Sure.
And so, like,
Yeah.
you just kind of have to go through the process. And even if you get a contract and you're like, wow, this is the golden ticket, it's
Yep.
still like best practice just to negotiate something so that you can flex the
Course.
muscle.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to plug ourselves a little bit too, a lot of times working with recruiters sometimes gets a bad stigma. There's good and bad ones out there. I'd be the first to tell you guys that. But I think like working with us, we want to be a trusted resource for you. We will negotiate for you on your behalf out there. Sometimes it's best, you don't want to, kind of break that. You don't want to show up to work one day and be like, oh my gosh, my first day is coming off just a very contentious contract negotiation. Let us or let another recruiter be that middleman for you. Like I said, we can push for you. We can go back and forth and tell you, yep, this is good. This is going to work. Let your resources work for you out there. Like I said, because sometimes you don't want to be put in that, awkward situation.
Right.
Totally get that too. But sometimes you got to have that 30 seconds of courage as well to ask for what you want in your contract too, of course.
That honestly, I'm like, I can't think of any clinician who wouldn't prefer to have some other seasoned negotiator negotiate on their
Right.
behalf. Like, I just can't
Yeah,
think of
it's
anyone.
not something you do every day, so
Yeah.
why not let someone who's used to doing this, who's seen it so many times over, we've hired every different level that we can, why not use those resources for you? It's only going to help you. It's only a benefit for you as well. And a big misconception, like at least from us, our services are 100% free to all job seekers out there. So it's not coming out of your pay. I hear that so many times. Well, I heard if I work with a recruiter, it's going to come out of my sign-on bonus or it's going to come out of my base. That is not true. We are paid on the back end from the clients. They want us. We are just an extension of their hiring division. They want to pay us to go out and find top talent for them, because if they do have to pay us, that means they found a great provider. They're filling a need. They're going to have that ROI coming in, immediately to
Right.
them after they bring in somebody. So yeah, so use us. That's what we're here for.
And honestly, especially in contracts, which we can talk a little bit more detail about this, but especially in contracts that have any type of productivity model built in, a lot of new
Yes.
grads in particular or early graduates, I think, have a hard time even understanding what that looks like and what that translates
Yes.
to them in terms of dollars. And it is so easy to sign a contract that is horrible. Actually, even
Right.
in the dermatology space, I recently talked to a new grad. I won't name the company, but really big company that provided like a post PA graduation training program for a year to get into dermatology. As you know, it
Yep.
can be hard to get into the space as a brand new grad. And so they had done this.
It is.
And there was a contract on the back end that it rolled into an employment contract that was a 4-year term and was absolutely trash in terms of
Yep.
dollars. The salary was low. When it switched to a productivity model, the percent of collections was way below industry standard, but they didn't know because they were a brand new grad. They had no one in their corner, like no resources, and they just went ahead and signed this without really any understanding of what that would
Right.
translate to on the back end. And like
Yep.
with those
Yeah.
contracts, I think they're confusing. So having the ability to have someone like show you the ropes that actually knows what they're looking at, that's invaluable, especially when you're not paying for it.
It is. And sometimes people are so desperate to get into a certain specialty. Like I said, we're in dermatology. We see it all the time. It's very hard to break in. A lot of times, just like you mentioned with that practice you were kind of referring to, people want experience a lot of times to get into that specialty. Well, how do you get experience? Sometimes they'll trap you into, signing a really bad agreement, but you don't see the stuff on the back end of that contract because you're just so desperate to break in because that's what people tell you. You've got to have that experience, but you've got to balance that out there, right? Because you don't want to trap or lock yourself into a position. I mean, I've seen contracts so bad where people got to move almost a whole state away if they ever want to work in the same specialty. And so it's really important to understand the details. And then, like you said, a lot of times, especially for new grads out there, you're not used to how you get paid like that, especially on, the bonus models. So have someone break that down for you. Even ask the hiring manager, ask them to show that, hey, what does this look like? If I'm seeing X amount of patients a day for 4 days, 5 days a week, whatever your schedule is, ask what that looks like on a production model. Ask how long it's going to take to get you ramped up. So many times we see people just chase a number out there, but they have no idea what that looks like in real life practice terms as well. So
I
be
agree.
careful.
People will get a productivity based contract and they'll say, like, okay, I'm percent of collections and this is what I could potentially earn. But it's like, did you ask the PAs who have been there for 10 years, like, what are their
Right.
annual collections? What's their patient volume? How many MAs do they have? Like, are there limitations to your productivity that are out of your control? But those
For
things
sure.
come, asking those kind of questions come from either having experience or having someone in your corner who knows what to help you, coach you to ask. And so I think
Exactly.
as a brand new grad, it's really easy to think that the contract's going to pay really well. And then when you actually come into practice, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought.
What did I sign? No, I love you hit on some great points there that I like to just kind of piggyback off. I think it's important, whenever you're looking for a job, you're not only getting interviewed from the practice, you need to interview them as well. Ask them all these questions. Make sure you're comfortable with the terms, especially ask people that are practicing in there, hey, how long have you been here? What's the turnover rate like here? If everyone in the office is like, oh, I just started 3 weeks ago, and no one's been there for longer than a year or two, there's probably some red flags there, right? You want to make sure that there's a good culture there. Ask another PA there, hey, what does collections look like for you? How long does it take you to hit that bonus threshold? They'll tell you. If they're afraid to tell you, there's probably some other underlying things that you need to worry about. But whenever you're talking through these contracts with people, you should be asking those questions and they should be willing to show you what that ramp up looks like and, what your compensation all in is going to look like 3, 6, 9 months down the road. Those are definitely important things to look for. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Kristen.
Can you give us a rundown on like a couple of different productivity model setups and just the basics of how it works? If someone's like, I'm at the beginning here and I don't know what percent of collections or RVU based models mean.
Yep, great. So let's start new grads. A lot of times, new grads, we'll see them just paid hourly. So don't be totally alarmed if you just have hourly rate. It's important to make sure that you're not locked into that hourly rate. A lot of times they're going to tie that into, a training period, sometimes at 3, 6 months, sometimes up to a year, but make sure after typically a year is the longest that you should be kind of tied in. After that, you're going to want to be switching over to either a base plus bonus threshold. If you're in a hospital system, you're going to be on more RVUs. That's more of a standardized process, that you're kind of collecting things as a whole. Where we really dive in, and especially, like I said, in my world, in the derm world, what we see a lot of times is a guaranteed base salary out there plus a bonus threshold. So let's just use easy math here for you guys listening. Say you get $100,000 base as a PA. You've got 2 years experience or whatever there. You get $100,000 base. Say you're getting 25% of collections, it's important to see when does that 25% of collections kick in. There's always going to be a threshold. Sometimes it's 3, 3.5, 4. It just depends what market you're really in. So what does that mean? That means say it's a 4x threshold and your base is $100,000. So everything you bring in collection wise after $400,000, you're going to start receiving your 25% on. Don't get married to that 25%. Like I said, those numbers vary in different markets. Make sure that you know what the markets are paying. Again, going back to the same thing again, use the resources out there. Make sure that you're getting a fair pay. It's important to understand, what do your reimbursement rate look like? What are you getting per patient on average? If you don't understand those simple things, you're not going to understand how you get paid. It is shocking how many people we work with that we ask them how they get paid. I'm like, well, I know I make this much, but I have no idea how I actually get paid. I know that my check hits the bank every
Uh-huh.
2 weeks via direct deposit, and that's all I know. It's
Uh-huh.
like, oh, no, like that just throws, I'm sure you see it all the time too, Kristen, but that just throws you. It's like, so really make sure you're understanding which model you're on. I'm not going to sit here and say there's one that's better or worse than the other. Everyone is different. Every system is different out there. So just make sure you understand what model it is that you're signing, understand how they're collecting, especially when you're on the bonus threshold. Are they giving that to you quarterly, monthly? Those are important things that you don't realize. You might be working for, 9 months, but when the heck is my bonus going to start hitting? And if you don't know, if you didn't read the fine print, it's on a 1 quarter or 1 month lag. You don't know what you don't know out there. So it's important to understand those different structures. And like I said, there's several different ones out there. Those are probably the most common ones that we see. You have anything else to add to that you see, Kristen?
I think everything you have said is so helpful. From a big lens standpoint, I think it's helpful to recognize what the data says about PA and NP compensation and these types of
Yeah.
models. I like Merit
Yep.
Health. I'm not like paid to say that. They're just a salary platform and job board for medical professionals. And if you look at their data for PAs and NPs specifically, there's actually a relatively high percentage of us that cross the 200K threshold, probably higher than you would think. It's 1 in 14
Yeah.
PAs right now. But if you look at how they're paid, the vast majority of people earning above 200K are on productivity models, either percent of collections or RVU based, where only 5% of PAs that are straight salary cross that same threshold. And so I think it's important to recognize that whether or not you're in that type of contract right now, if that is something you can pull into your future, the likelihood of you earning more is higher just based on broad statistical data. And so there is a real important piece to understanding this as a medical professional, even if it doesn't apply to the contract you're sitting in right now.
Yep. I love that. I love, stats that you provided there. I think that's really a key point to hit on, like you did there. We hear all the time, people reach out, I want to make X amount of dollars. Okay. Like I want this base. Okay. Well, if you see jobs out there that are advertising a super high base, that's not the highest paying job out there. It never is. And it never will be. That's almost kind of a gimmick or a gotcha. Like they're hiding something there. Probably people that worry about that high base, they're not going to be your big income earners. There are people that are willing to bet on their production. That is where you're going to really grow your wealth long term. And it's important that you set yourself up for, that financial flexibility and freedom
Yep.
in your career, because you work hard, you might as well get paid for how hard you work as well out there.
I
So
agree.
that's a great.
And especially in dermatology or any like productivity based practice, when you gather the skills that allow you to provide high quality patient care while simultaneously being efficient, you can really crush it. I mean, I know a
Yes,
derm PA working 2 days a week every other week, so not even every week, and getting paid $100,000 a year to do that. Now, when she's working, she's
absolutely.
very busy. She sees a ton of patients in a day, but like she's seasoned, she's efficient, she knows how to provide great care in a time efficient way. And so now she has the ability to really flex this like incredible schedule and be with her kids, but still make great money,
Right.
which comes from
Yeah.
honestly understanding like the business side of medicine and recognizing that when you're productive and you generate for your employer, that they're able to pay you.
No doubt. It's important to understand the background of it too. If you want to be a high income earner, which, who doesn't, it's important that you understand the background of the business as well. How many MAs are you going to have for support? How much admin time are you going to have in the office each week? All that stuff. If you only have one MA and you're trying to see, 30 patients a day, you're going to be pretty slow going through that. It's not a good conducive setup for you there. So your income is dependent on some other outside factors as well. So make sure that you're asking the practice, all of those questions, because your whole support system is really going to be what drives to get that highest income.
Yeah, and like just do technology things to be efficient, right? Like dictate your notes, use
Yes.
AI tools. It's amazing to me. I walk around the hospital, I like see all these PAs typing their notes and like, what is this like 2016 still? Like dictate your notes and, you like use the
I
voice
know.
AI tools. What in the world? It will take you 3 times as long. It's like this stuff sounds so small, but efficiency matters. And especially if you're on any kind of productivity based bonus, it's like, yeah, get the job done, get the patient seen. The chart is like just a little box that needs to be checked at the end.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah, efficiency matters and time is money. Time equals money out there. So
Yes.
make
Yeah.
sure that you're working hard and you're not just getting, lagged down by the simple things, like you said. Sometimes technology can be scary. I totally understand that, especially in kind of the AI world that we're all, kind of closing our eyes and diving into together out there. But take the time, research it, study it. It's not that scary. We can do it. It will help you. There's tools that are designed to make your life easier, not harder for you.
Now, I do know in terms of contracts, one of the things that always gets asked about is non competes. And I'm sure that you have looked at thousands of contracts and have a whole
Yeah.
spectrum of non competes under your belt. Do you have any pearls in that area? Red flags, yellow flags, green flags? Just some guidance on when it's okay to sign, when maybe you should reconsider.
Yep. I love that non-competes are a huge thing, no matter which specialty you're in. Especially if you love the specialty you're in, make sure you really, really pay attention to your non-compete, because if you don't, if you get all the compensation you want and that's all great, but you don't like it in a couple of years or you need to move, like I said, you might be moving so far away from where you're at. It might force you out of the specialty again. So, and non-competes are changing. We've been following the Supreme Court rulings and things like that over the last couple of years. It's really been a hot button issue. Like if you're in California, no non-competes out there. So it's a little different. Most states are still, it really truly is more of a state level issue at this point where we're seeing, and again, I'm not going to throw out a number. I'm not going to say your non-compete has to be 5 miles no matter where you're at, because it is just truly dependent on location. Some little tidbits I would give you for advice is making sure you're reading the language. And there's so many times we see language that says, okay, you have a non-compete of 10 miles, but the next sentence might be 10 miles from any office that we have. So if you're only practicing in one office and they've got 20 locations, well, guess what? Your non-compete, it's bigger than I can even show you on this screen. Now, so many people don't realize that because they see, oh, 10 miles. That's great. That's not bad. I can go. But it's that every office scenario out there. So really make sure you're looking at that. I've even seen non-competes get so specific now with practices where they're listing other practices that you can't go and work for. Never sign anything like that, because you are not in control over how big that other practice grows. That other practice may only be 5 practices now, but maybe they make a big acquisition in the next couple years. Well, now you're boxed out of all over the country. Again, so never sign anything that says you can't work for X, Y, or Z. Trust me, I've seen practices time and time again try to slide that in there just to see if they'll sign it. And sometimes, like I said, they will. More times than not, if you ask to take it out, they're pretty flexible on that, but really make sure and know the length of it as well. The length is important. I think a year is standard. Sometimes they'll push for 2 years out there. Anything longer than that, I think you really need to be pushing hard to lower that non-compete range down. So really make sure you have a vision. It's hard when you sign because you don't necessarily know what you're going to be doing in 3 years, but you've got to set yourself up and you got to protect yourself. Like I said, the non-competes can be very, very restrictive and just cumbersome to you if you have to go and look for a job again sometime. So be careful there.
Yeah, I would also add too, make sure you're aware of, is this a non-compete that says I can't practice any kind of medicine at all? Or is this a non-compete that
Yeah.
says I'm in cardiology now, I can't go to another cardiology group? Because there's a huge
Yep.
difference in that world, especially for like PAs and NPs
Absolutely.
who can move subspecialties. Like, can you, if there's
Easily.
no
Yeah.
conflict, can you go do orthopedics? You're obviously not going to steal the cardiology practice's patients if you're going to go do an orthopedics.
Right.
But sometimes the non-compete's written in such a way that it's like you can't provide clinical services at all. So it's really helpful to like dial that in and know exactly what you're signing before you do.
No doubt. Like you said, yeah, they will try to slide anything in there. So make sure you're reading the fine print. That's why we always encourage you to get an attorney as well, because they're going to make sure that they're looking over all that stuff for you too, just to protect you.
Do you have resources on how you would go about finding an attorney that has experience looking at clinician contracts specifically?
Yes. So not a plug. We're not paid by these guys. I have researched so many contract groups out there. We work with a company called Resolve. They do every specialty. We have found them to be very fair, very unbiased for everyone. They've got fantastic market data on salary and contracts that they keep as well. So they're going to be able to help you with all that. No matter what specialty you're in, they've got data for everything. They're not designed to, push you towards private practice or private equity or hospital systems. That's the biggest thing I would say, whether it's Resolve or whoever, whatever attorney you work with, do your homework on them, ask for references. I think that's the biggest thing is ask for references. There are so many people that just use, oh, I heard this person using, but they don't really do any background homework on them. And then that person is really just pushing them to the same kind of practice over and over and over again because that attorney is in that practice's back pocket. So sometimes you don't realize, but these attorneys can have deals kind of behind the scenes with these large groups. So you don't really realize that they're not really on your side negotiating some of these things for you
Right.
as well. So make sure you find an unbiased attorney out there. That is super, super important.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, you go and you're assuming this is an unbiased review of your contract. But if they have a pre-existing relationship, well, they have a lens that they're looking at it through. That might not serve you.
I've worked with people that I know, some attorneys out there that wrote the contracts for these practices, and then they're reviewing them on their behalf. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's
That is a
crazy out there,
conflict
right?
of
It's
interest.
scary sometimes. It seems
Wow.
like it, right? But they don't know. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
Wow.
So make
That's crazy.
sure you're very careful with who you're working with. Referrals are the biggest thing I can tell you guys. If you had someone who had a good experience with someone, trust them, use that person, like you said, because you don't want to get stuck in a bad contract. So
Give me
yeah,
like a
good
very
points.
broad range. What kind of price point would I anticipate to have an attorney review my contract?
Cost wise,
Yeah.
for an attorney? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I've seen it range. Let's take a couple steps back. We were just talking about AI. There are some attorneys and groups out there who you can get an AI contract review. It'll be turned around to you in 10 minutes. That AI contract is actually going based off of 400 other contracts in your specialty that they've actually put in and studied. So it's a pretty good if you need something quick, it's a 10-minute turnaround. And those start at about $200. So if you're looking for, an affordable option, that's an affordable option. Other ones, I would say start in the $500 to $1,000 range. You can get a good review for. The biggest thing I'd recommend is paying per contract review and not per hour. If you're paying an attorney per hour, well, guess what? They're paid to redline these agreements for you. What are they going to do? They're going to keep redlining them. They're going to keep going back and forth. So make sure you're paying per job. They're I think reasonable, $500 to $1,000 is reasonable for clinicians across specialties. If you want a little bit more, if you're looking to get into some partnership ideas and things like that with the practices, those are going to be a little bit more expensive reviews. But again, I always tell people don't look at the attorney cost as a cost. That's an investment for you because a lot of times they're going to help you drive up your worth as well. So really invest in yourself, pay for a good attorney. Don't view it as like, oh my gosh, I got to go and pay $1,000 to
Yeah.
get this reviewed. This is crazy. By not paying that $1,000, you might have left $10,000 on the table. Most people would pay $1,000 to make an extra $10,000 if you asked them, I'm sure, right?
Yep, absolutely. So let me ask you this. If you're going to get started looking for a job, and let's say first, not in the dermatology space, just across the board, how would you recommend someone get started? Is this as simple as like you should go set some alerts on LinkedIn and look at Indeed, or do you have other suggestions for how you should initiate a job search?
Great, great question. I'll break down what we do on a small micro level from the dermatology side, then I'll kind of go macro as well. So on the small side, what we do, we've got an app. It's called MyDermJobs. It's a fantastic resource for clinicians that passively look out there. What you can do, you can set alerts for jobs in different areas. That way, you're like, you know what? I just kind of want to see where's the market going out there. So you'll get alerts every time, a new job in Texas pops up or a new job in New York pops up. What I would caution you guys on a macro level is be careful where you're sending your CV. So many times people are just, clicking on job boards. They're putting their CV out there. Next thing you know, you're going to be getting calls from recruiters, from companies that you didn't even know existed out there in markets that you have no interest in. Look for things out there to set alerts for specifically the location that you're looking in. That way you're not going to get overwhelmed. Looking for a job, I'll be the first to tell you, it can be very overwhelming. Where do you even start? In dermatology alone, like on our job board, we have 1,000 jobs just in the derm space. So how do you break that down? Make sure you set up where you want to go. Be looking on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a phenomenal network. Constantly add connections. You don't have to say something to me. You don't have to be messaging them back and forth, but follow the key opinion leaders in your field that you're in. Connect with CEOs of different companies. Connect with different physicians, with other MPs and PAs that are in your specialty. I pick up so much and so many resources just by reading LinkedIn every morning and seeing what's going on in the medical world. I follow every specialty just to kind of see what's out there. So LinkedIn is a phenomenal resource as well. Like I said, use recruiters. Don't fall into the stigma that they're not there to help you. Find a trusted ally, someone that can break down what's available for you. Most times, recruiters know what's coming on the job market before you even see it hit the job board. So many jobs are posted, what I would say not posted, they're silent jobs. So the best jobs don't even hit the market because they're working with, a recruiter to bring them top talent out there. And two, you got to think about sometimes too, not all employers want other people in the community to see that they're hiring. Maybe they have to get rid of a provider so they can't post their job on a job board. Maybe they're looking to expand. We're working with a great client in Texas right now, just for an example. Just talked to her yesterday. She's like, hey, look, got a great practice. I want to expand into this other market over here, but I don't want my competition to know that I'm going to this market before. So I need you guys to go out there and find top talent for me before we hit this market without my name being out there. So that's a big thing too. So make sure, you're working with resources out there who are constantly in communication with the hiring managers. What you don't want to do is just blindly submit application after application. That's going to be a defeating process for you, especially in sought after markets. You're going to see 20 applications. How do you make your CV come to life is very important. So you want someone speaking on your behalf, someone who can get you to the direct hiring manager, get you that first phone conversation. So that way you can sell yourself, and make sure that you're using all those things at your tools that are available to you.
Could not agree with you more. I actually think the worst way to go about looking for a job is to start randomly like applying to jobs, like cold applications on Indeed or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
Realistically, people. And so I guess, yeah, recruiters, of course, like you mentioned, even in the non-clinical space, like even if you're trying to transition into industry or something like that, recruiters oftentimes will be the connection that you need to become aware of jobs that maybe you didn't even really know the title of correctly that would be in alignment with your skill set.
Right.
And then utilizing, like you said, LinkedIn is incredible, not only for their job alerts, but for the network. Like, I love clinical medicine. I do. I still practice clinically, but I have job alerts turned on in the health tech space, in the industry space, because I'm like, why not? I want to know what's going on out there, and I want to know what's available, even if I'm not ever actively looking for a job. And it creates connections. It creates interesting conversations. I actually am one of those people that chats on LinkedIn, but then I'll even get like invitations from health tech companies that I've been kind of like stalking who are in my clinical realm and like, hey, we're looking for investors. It's like, this is cool. There's a lot to be said for making connections with real human beings. And the more you can do that, even if you're just leveraging your little circle, maybe where you rotated or where you have worked professionally, you will get so much further than if you are just like on Indeed, like submit CV, it doesn't go well.
No, it's daunting out there. And like I said, and then next thing you know, you're going to be getting calls from everyone out
Yes.
there. And that's taking up time. Then you don't know what's left from what's right at that point. So yes, use your network. Big plug to LinkedIn. It's a fantastic starting point for everybody. If you're going to start somewhere, build your connections. It's a great spot to start.
Now, if I were a clinician specifically wanting a dermatology job, how do I go about working with MyDermRecruiter?
Yeah, great. So the best way to go about working with MyDermRecruiter is going to our job board, jobs.mydermrecruiter.com. You can literally hit your subspecialty. If you're an NP, PA, you can filter those jobs. You can filter which states you're looking in. And from that point, you'll see all the jobs and the resources that we have available to you. What I really like about working with a company like us is that you're just going to work with one recruiter on our team. So say you're looking in Texas, Florida, California, you've got a bunch of different areas. You're not going to get passed around to, 4 or 5 different people on our team. You're going to work with one seasoned recruiter on our team. What's really important to us is, like I've been hitting on this the whole time too, is that we will never send your CV anywhere without your consent. So we want to get to know everything there is to know about you. We want to find the best jobs for you. If you don't want to be sent to certain places, that is totally okay. But it's super easy to get to work with us. It's just a one-click apply on our website. Like I said, our app is a great resource as well. You can email me directly at brent@mydermrecruiter.com. I can get you in touch with people on our team as well. We want to be available for you guys. There's lots of great ways to get in touch with us. I always recommend following us on LinkedIn. We post a ton of great articles on LinkedIn, on my personal page, on our company page as well. Follow us on Instagram. Instagram is a great resource as well, just to follow, key people in your specialty. Follow all these people. I learned so many different things, whether they're posts or reels from these guys. It's fun just to kind of see how to keep up to date with people. And then, like I said, you never know what that could lead to. Sometimes a quick message, hey, loved your video, would love to learn more. People are very open to networking that way as well. So use what's available to you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brent. I really appreciate all the expertise you bring to the table. We will include the links that you
Thanks.
mentioned in the show notes so people can get quick and easy
Great.
access to you. But whether or not they're looking for dermatology or not, I know they learned something today, so I appreciate your time.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us. Hope you guys had a great session with us, and we appreciate it.